Nasty. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. I have a very special guest on tonight, Deputy Chief Chris Covelli. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, David. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. So Chris has come on my radio show a couple times, and I've texted him before with like questions about things. He's always very attentive, which is what I love. And I will say this. I know a lot of people in the local political arena, and every time your name comes up, everybody loves you. Like everybody. Nobody has a bad thing to say about you. I'm like, okay, that's great.
That's
nice. So good for you for that. Especially in this day and age in the climate of policing, usually you have a lot of pushback. But why don't you get it going with like some of the better stuff? Like what's going on with the department? Like what kind of good stuff's happening?
Yeah, so obviously we're everybody hates saying the word, but we're on the outside of that COVID pandemic where everything was locked down. It was tough on us for staffing, recruitment. The academies were closed, so it really backlogged them. But we're starting to be on the incline now with hiring, both in our sheriff's deputy arena and also correctional officers arena. We're excited where the direction of that's headed. We've got some really good lateral candidates that are coming over to our agency from other agencies. So that's great. We're actually starting our community police academy later this month. It'll be active. I believe applications on that are due February 19th. That's a really cool program that gives a behind the scenes tour of the sheriff's office and all the inner workings of our agency, from patrol to investigations to court security, corrections. It really gives the community a great inside look at all of the things we're doing to serve those throughout Lake County. So anybody who's interested in that, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a 10-week program. I could be mistaken on that. I don't have the fact sheet in front of me, but approximately 10 weeks. You meet once a week for 2 hours on Monday evenings. And the feedback we get from that is always awesome. Everybody's welcome. We've had everybody from every job you can imagine that has attended in every sector of the community. So it's a cool thing. Beyond that, just working at what we can to get our staffing levels up to the optimum level and so we can best serve Lake County.
Who decides the staffing levels? Is it the legislators or is it your department specifically, or both?
It is the legislators of Lake County. So the Lake County Board. What I will say is we are definitely working and advocating to increase our head count. Our head count hasn't really increased in probably a couple decades, yet the population of Lake County has really exploded. Adding head count obviously adds to the cost of our office, which we certainly are conscientious about. But, community safety is something we want to be there for. And oftentimes we have deputies running call to call to call. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for them to do the community policing and meet and greet the community that we serve on a daily basis. And we really would like to see that. But no, that's a great question. We're keeping the community safe, but with additional headcount, there's a lot more we'd be able to do to serve.
Are you understaffed technically?
So we are not at our maximum authorized headcount right now. So I guess you theoretically could say, yes, we are understaffed. The corrections division actually is significantly understaffed. One of the things we've done is temporarily transferred 150 inmates from our jail to the McHenry County Jail.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because our corrections officers were being forced to work multiple forced hire backs on a weekly basis, which creates significant safety concerns inside our jail with the inmates. It creates safety concerns with our staff. It really makes an environment for our staff that's not great. And we do want them to have a healthy work-life balance because if that's healthy, what they do on the job is healthy as well. So we needed to hit that relief valve to really give our staff time to regroup and let us recruit. So we're working with the county's HR department to try to really bring our recruitment more robustful. They're really responsible for that, being the HR of the county, certainly with our support and our help. But we are working on that. The sheriff has advocated for, ensure that our staff is receiving adequate benefits as well. So we can hire, recruit, and retain the highest quality employees to work with our already high quality employees.
Oh, great. That's great. Are there any of the new laws as of 2024, January 2024, that are how do you see them? Any affecting policing in Illinois, positive or negative in your mind, or?
No, I mean, every January we see probably about 100 laws that come out, some that apply to law enforcement, some that don't. Certainly, we're always going to adapt and shift operations to ensure that we're complying with the law. We are members of the Illinois Sheriff's Association, some other associations. So if there's legislation introduced that could be what we feel and what the sheriff feels is negative to keeping the community safe, certainly we'll advocate with those lawmakers and see what we can do to both be on the same page with each other. For example, there was just a bill introduced by, I believe, a rep out of Cook County. And what it would have done is, for the most part, eliminated a police officer's ability in the state of Illinois to pull somebody over for a traffic infraction unless it rose to the level of a misdemeanor crime.
Right.
So you get somebody that's driving 24 miles over the speed limit, we couldn't pull them over for that. And I mean, speeding is the number one cause, that and DUI of death on our roadways. Somebody that's weaving in and out, that could be indicative they're impaired. And a police officer right now can pull that person over. And if they've been drinking and the police officer gets a huge whiff of alcohol and there's other signs of impairment, odds are they're probably intoxicated. They could be held accountable for that. And what that law would have done is restricted our ability to make traffic stops for these infractions and allow police officers to keep the community safe. Fortunately, through advocating with the Illinois Sheriff's Association, I know the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police were involved as well. They talked to the rep that introduced that bill, and the rep pulled it back and said, you know what, we need more input from law enforcement on this. And we really do try to keep our eye on those things and work with our legislators. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. The community we serve, law enforcement, those that are making the laws, signing the laws. I mean, so we all have to come together and make sure that we're on the same page, to keep the community safe. And obviously, people's rights are of the utmost importance and absolutely paramount. And we want to ensure that we're protecting people's rights too.
That's great. Is it true that police take an oath to uphold the Constitution? Is that a thing?
So yeah, law enforcement, when you take the oath of office, you're swearing that you will abide by the laws of the land and the Illinois Constitution and the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I had heard about that proposal. When I first heard about it, I thought it was already passed, and I read just today that it was merely proposed, but I did not hear that it was pulled back. So
it was.
Yes. It was more than just speeding. It was like, for expired tags, you weren't allowed to pull. There's a list of things like cops can't pull you over for this stuff.
I mean, some of the things that we're thinking of is, okay, so if somebody steals a car, all they have to do is take the license plates off. And, if we get behind that car, we can't even pull it over to inspect, is this car stolen? So, there are a lot of probably unintended consequences that would have come if that legislation moved forward, gained steam, and was passed. I'm sure somebody that regularly travels 10, 15 miles over the speed limit wouldn't be opposed to that law being passed. But the majority of the community, I'll tell you what, the number one traffic complaint we receive is for speeding cars. So, it's something that we're cognizant of, and we want to ensure that we're protecting our community and serving them in the way that they feel they should be served. That's what it comes down to.
Well, good. That's very cool. I mean, I drive around a lot. I do I do delivery driving a lot during the winter. I do gardening during the spring and summer and fall. But I don't appreciate people who speed like lunatics. And one thing I noticed, I got to tell you, is people like just blowing through red lights. Like they think they're going to make the yellow and they don't. And I know that they know they're not going to, but they just blow through a red light. Drives me nuts. You know how dangerous that is? Anyway, okay. So I take pictures of their license plates. But no, I won't do that. Okay, so I wanted to ask you too, more about like the day-to-day stuff that you do or John does or whomever else. Like, don't you have to like physically, bodily go to a multitude of different buildings in Lake County and like open them up?
Well,
or is it just the courthouse?
Yeah, so really just the courthouse, our court security division. They will open up the specific courtrooms that are open for the day. Lake County obviously has a pretty robust facilities department, so they get certain other facilities ready, prep for the day. So no, not necessarily. I mean, in the other departments too. So the public defender's office, they'd be responsible for opening their business. The coroner's office, responsible for opening theirs. So it kind of falls to whatever division, department, office that business is going to be conducted at.
I see. Okay, good. I was under the impression that there was. I know that I heard that like the Sheriff John actually goes and opens the courthouse.
Not him personally. Certainly he makes his rounds and he's at meetings throughout Lake County every single day. So he is definitely out and about, but not physically going and opening buildings.
Oh, okay. I was very much misinformed then. Okay, cool. Because I thought that was odd. I'm like, okay, why would he have to do that?
Yeah, I would think that if that were the case, it'd be some old archaic statute that existed. But no, that's not.
Very cool. Okay. Under the current climate, and it's still occurring, as policing in America, and that's the way it's going now, there's still some pushback from isolated rural areas, or even I think Minneapolis is still doing stuff with their policing, and you hear about defunding police a lot, and that county boards or city boards or village boards are really fighting against their police. And in some areas it might be warranted. I don't know. I haven't done that full of research. Is your department getting any pushback from the village board or any sort of bias against you that you think, whether it be defunding or anything else? That you're allowed to talk about?
We haven't seen that from the county board. We have had county board members that have, expressed maybe some concerns because they haven't been informed on what our office is doing and or maybe taking the time to conduct that research. And what I can tell you is that, one of the things when Sheriff Heidelberg came in, not that things were drastically wrong prior to that, but he took a look at policy, procedure, best practice, community relations, and really melded everything together to ensure that we are best serving the community in the best ways possible. But having that community input, having that community feedback, creating a stream of two-way communication, so we know what is expected by the community of us, and we can answer those calls of service. At the end of the day, the badge I wear is absolutely nothing without the support of the community, because we wear this badge for the people we serve, plain and simple. Any law enforcement agency that has the identity of a disconnect of us versus them,
right,
they're going to fail. They're doing it wrong. Right. That's not how law enforcement was designed, set up, hundreds of years ago. And we have to ensure that we're answering those calls of the community. And that's one thing that, one of the many things that Sheriff Heidelberg has ensured that we're doing properly. Couple just off the cuff examples is bringing our agency up to 100% compliance with crisis intervention training, a 40-hour course before it was even considered to be law that police officers have to go through that training. He had everybody, every member of our office trained in that, not just sworn deputies, but correctional officers, record staff, those that have any interaction with the community at all, whether it's at our headquarters or out in the field. He wanted to ensure that that's a high priority. In changing our use of force policy a bit to place in a duty to intervene before that was even considered to be law. So if and we would never tolerate it, but if somebody were using excessive force in our agency and there was another deputy or member of our team with them, they have an obligation per policy to step in and stop that from happening immediately, and then immediately report it up. And if that other member didn't do that, they'd be facing termination charges. So just two very small of the many examples where he's worked to ensure that we're building trust with the community. And I'll tell you, I'm not trying to be biased working for the sheriff's office, but I came from another department who did things very well. And I've seen how dozens of other departments around not only the county, but the nation operate. And I would really say that we are in the top cut. We have accreditations, national accreditations, and what they do is they come in, ensure we're operating by best practice, and not just saying we are, but actually looking and reviewing and picking out examples of the thousands of interactions we have to ensure that we're following those standards. And if we're not, we don't receive that accreditation. So, we hold ourselves to a very, very high standard. And quite frankly, I would encourage every law enforcement organization across this country to be doing that, because It is all about community at the end of the day, plain and simple.
It really is, and I'm glad you said that. And I remember something you said on one of my radio shows once. You said, as a police officer, we get our authority over you, from you. It's like a wonderfully said quote. Like, it's like a perfect way to say it. This is a democracy. We do vote in the sheriff. And you're right. It's, you're working for us in a sense. You're, that kind of thing. I don't take it too far. We can talk about auditors if you want. But doesn't Lake County have one? You told me they have one auditor.
We've had a few. There's one particular auditor that comes around quite a bit. I've gotten to know him myself pretty well from being audited at one of our county buildings. And at the end of the day, maybe some auditors might have an approach where it is kind of pushing buttons. At the end of the day, what they're trying to do is ensure that their government is in compliance with the law and doing things openly and honestly. And,
right.
I will say that it isn't easy for a lot of, especially non-law enforcement government employees, to have a camera put in their face and recorded. And it's an uneasy feeling, even for
absolutely.
So tensions can get a little high, obviously. And at the end of the day, what we talk to our staff about is, hey, listen, they're member of the public, they're coming in, they have a right to record, they have a right to live stream, they can be anywhere in the public building the general public can be. If they come in, let them do their thing and help them out like you would anybody else. And if you're uncomfortable being recorded or on a live stream, tap out, let them know you're going to get somebody else to help them and get someone else to help them. And, we'll get through it. We've got nothing to hide.
Well, that's good. I as a person, a human being, I wouldn't want somebody coming up in my face and starting recording me in the middle,
right?
Just because they can, Right. So, but okay, very cool. So, I wanted to ask you about, we're talking about the laws, the assault rifle ban or not registry, I guess, in Illinois. I saw some sheriffs in counties otherwise, downstate or whatever, saying like, no, we're not going to enforce it. Like, we're just not doing that. What's been going on there with the sheriff's department?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I think it's a slippery slope for any law enforcement officer to pick and choose what laws they feel are valid and should be adhered to and should be enforced. That really isn't our role, whether you're an elected sheriff or an appointed police chief. Our role is the legislature. They pass bills. The governor will sign those bills into law, and it's our job to adhere to that. Unless there was something totally egregious that would be resulting in death or some type of bodily harm, we shouldn't be picking or choosing what laws we enforce. So our stance is the law was passed. It has become law. Does every police officer in the state of Illinois agree with it? Probably not. But that doesn't mean it gives us the flexibility and the latitude to say, well, we're not going to enforce it. What law enforcement has the ability to do, certainly I can't imagine there's going to be any law enforcement trying to kick in doors and search homes for potential guns. I mean, somebody's home is their safe haven. It's their kingdom. It's their castle. And that's totally respectable. But, one of the things this law can do is if somebody is committing a different crime and is in violation of the law that became law, or the bill that became law, it gives the police and or sheriff's deputies or whoever an ability to further investigate or further charge with a different crime if the situation necessitates. So, yeah, I know there's different feelings about registering firearms. I mean, we're not going door to door and asking for people to prove and show their papers.
But I think that's what people are afraid of, is that it's going to get to that. Because I guess the actual amount of people that have registered, knowing how many people have guns, is very, very low. I think it's like at 2,000 or something like that.
Yeah, I know it is low.
And so like I'm even wondering if this law is going to like be effective because of that. Like you said, like, our cops really going to go around and start kicking in doors, stuff like that. Because I think that's what people are afraid of.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that everybody, if they disagree with a law, they need to talk to their legislators, and they need to have meaningful conversations and go about things the proper way to have a law repealed or changed or rescinded. But we live in a society where we have to communicate, and it can't just be saying we're going to break the law or we're going to pick and choose what laws we enforce. That leads to that's a very slippery slope. And I don't think that sets society up for success. But again, I cannot imagine a police department or a sheriff's office anywhere in the state of Illinois where they're kicking in doors, asking or demanding to see papers for a firearm. That's very unreasonable.
That it seems like a bit outlandish, yeah. Okay, well, what about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, marijuana was made legal recreationally. Have you seen any negative effects of that?
We've definitely seen an increase significantly of those driving under the influence of cannabis and impaired. We've seen an increased number of serious traffic crashes that do involve the use of cannabis. So in that sense, yes. I mean, and just like alcohol, I mean, we see those cases too. So we anticipated we would see an increase in DUIs involving cannabis and crashes involving cannabis. And we have, I mean, but broader than that, I can't say that there's been, anything significant that's come from the legalization, anything negatively significant.
How are you able to test for marijuana without putting a needle in somebody's arm, or no?
That's the only way I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, there may be I don't want to speak out of school. I would have to ask our traffic expert on that. I think that blood is the only way.
So you can't even do that till after the fact, till after the accidents occurred and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, and so if somebody's pulled over and there's indicators that they're impaired, and there's indicators that they recently used cannabis. There are roadside field sobriety tests that can be done to test for impairment of cannabis. Some are, and then there's something called a vertical gaze nystagmus where it goes up actually, and that can give some indications of impairment other than alcohol. So I mean, there's roadside tests, but as far as chemical tests go, the only one I am personally aware of, and I could be wrong on this, is blood.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. I wonder if there's like people working on technology to do that. Like I heard something about saliva.
Yeah, I've heard
you
that
can do
too.
a swab. I don't know if that that was on the internet. It can be complete nonsense.
And maybe there's something where there's a presumptive test where it says, this person, it indicates that they are higher than the allowable amount in their system. But really, it's going to be a blood test that's going to be able to really show whether that's the case or not.
Might you know like what the amount of THC in your blood is for it to be legal?
Not without looking it up.
Okay, that's really interesting to me, and I think I texted you about this before because they have the lounge at Rise, say, right, where you go in and you smoke pot for however long that you leave,
right?
And I'm like, well, hold on a tick. Like, I mean, you're not allowed to legally drive being stoned, being impaired
right.
on marijuana. Like you go to a alcohol bar, a typical bar, and you have a few beers in an hour, and you're not legally drunk. You can drive home and you're fine. You take 2 hits of pot, you're stoned.
Yeah,
that's it. You're done. Like, and you do that, and then you just leave, and it's okay. I don't
know.
No,
that I wouldn't encourage that or recommend that at all.
Yeah, it's just a very odd situation for me, but okay. For some reason, Mundelein allows it. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep it too long because I know you have fatherly duties to get to. How old is your youngest right now?
Youngest is 5. So I have a 12-year-old. She'll be 13 this weekend, actually, an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old.
That's fabulous. I love that. Yeah. I remember having asking you to come on an interview. Like I'm in elbow deep in baby stuff.
Yeah.
So that was about 4 years ago. Anyway, but I did want to ask you about the Waukegan officer who threw that dude who was cuffed to the ground, and I guess he got concussed or something. And whatever you know about that, because obviously nowadays you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, obviously, anybody that saw the video, it's shocking and absolutely inexcusable. And I don't know a lot about it from other than what I've read. And what I've read about it is it looks like Waukegan PD absolutely did the right thing immediately. And when this happened, immediately put the officer on leave, immediately contacted the Lake County State's Attorney's Office. And I mean, obviously, the video speaks for itself. The state attorney's office subsequently filed charges against the officer, felony charges, and they're holding this person accountable. And Waukegan leadership obviously did the right thing in this situation. That officer did the absolute wrong thing in that situation, from what we can see on the video. It's disappointing because that's not representative of Waukegan PD, and that's not representative of law enforcement throughout Lake County. And it just takes, one person to do something bad, and law enforcement's painted with a very broad brush. And it's not something that officer's colleagues would condone, let alone anybody else who's out here doing the right thing in law enforcement. And I'll tell you that the overwhelmingly vast majority of law enforcement officers, especially in this county, are doing it for the right reasons. They signed up because they had a calling to serve, and they want to serve, and they want to be there and protect people in their worst moments, and be there to help them when they need help. And that's really what it's all about. And I mean, when we sit in interviews to hire people, that's what we're looking for in candidates. We're not looking for people that are in it because they want to enforce the law and it's everything is black and white. We want people to use their minds, be able to think dynamically, but their calling to serve has to be what's pushing them into this profession. And that's what law enforcement feels across the area.
No, absolutely. I believe that. Like I said to you before, like I watch a lot of videos on policing. I mean, almost every day for close to 4 years now. A lot. I don't think I've ever seen anything from a Lake County cop that was a problem. Like, not one.
No,
most of it seems to happen in Colorado, and I don't know what it's up with Colorado, but okay.
Yeah, and I'll say not just the sheriff's office, but across the county in Lake County. We do a good job, I feel, of policing ourselves. And if somebody does something that's out of line, not appropriate, they're held accountable. And if it's something where it's a legitimate mistake, where they didn't know, that, hey, maybe this wasn't how you should proceed. Obviously, an excessive use of force is clearly, you should know. That's not what I'm referring to. But, where you make a mistake and it's trainable and you can correct an action, that's what we want to do. We want to train somebody if they're trainable, if they make a mistake, and get them to where they need to be. And, we now put people through an academy that I want to say is at least 14 weeks long, and then in-house field training program is generally 12 to 16 weeks, and then a probationary period after that. And it's all of that is to really ingrain the new recruit with the fundamentals of how we should police and how we should do our jobs. And again, that's community driven always.
I'm so glad that you emphasize the community part of it, because that's so important to a lot of people. I mean, it kind of harkens me back to, like, as a kid when, like, I grew up in Munderland, where we knew a lot of the cops by name. Like, I was in Cub Scouts, and, like, they would show up and I got to know them and that kind of thing. And, they'd show up at your door. Like, I remember one year my dad was shooting off fireworks at the 4th of July, and the cop who pulled up, and we knew him, but we were inside, so we ended up arresting my dad. And when we went to the police station, we're like, Phil, what's going on? Anyway, so there's a little bit more Mayberry type situation, which is kind of nice.
That's huge. And, speaking from my own experience, my wife, she's a deputy chief in Lincolnshire, and she was a school resource officer at Stevenson High School for 5 years. And there are times we are out and about somewhere in Lake County where a former student that maybe she just said, had a few words to in a hallway, or maybe she dealt with on a disciplinary type level. But I can't tell you how many times they're now adults have come up to her and said, "Hey, Officer Kim, how are you? How you been?" And I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, really, at the end of the day, having somebody circle back around with you that you interacted with, whether it's a week ago or 15 years ago, and they had a positive interaction, that is something people remember forever. Right. Generally, an ordinary person, they're not coming in contact with the police very often. And when they do, it's a memorable experience. And we want that memory to be a positive one. We want that to, even if it was a negative, we were interacting with that person. Maybe it was pulling them over for speeding. We want that interaction where they come back and they say, you know what? Yeah, I got pulled over for speeding, but I was treated with respect and I was treated with empathy. And that's what it's about in order for us to succeed. And where you see some agencies fail in other parts of the country, there's a clear divide and division that had been brewing for an extended period of time, and mistrust that builds, and lack of communication, and it creates a recipe for disaster. And the really negative part of that is law enforcement across the country for a period of time will be painted with that brush, right, that they don't care, or it's us versus them, or they're too heavy-handed, and we have to work very diligently to ensure that those aren't the law enforcement stereotypes.
No, absolutely. And then just logistically, I think that sort of attitude or approach works against police, because then the community won't cooperate with you. If you need information from that there's been robberies in a neighborhood or something like that, and you have a hunch that like neighbors know who it is or can give you information, they're like, no, we don't like you because you treat us like badly.
If the community doesn't trust their police, they are not helping in solving crimes, and the police cannot do it on their own. They cannot solve crimes on their own. They have to have the community support to be able to do that. And that is the only way it works, is through that collaboration. And that is why it's so fundamental to what we do in our profession, to have those good relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to leave it on that high note. All right. So, because I know I got to get going. Deputy Chief Chris Covelli, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure texting or talking with you. You're very informative. And again, everybody thinks you're doing a great job and you're a great person, which I
Thanks, David. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. So I will probably be in touch, I'm sure, at some point. Tell John I said hi.
I absolutely will.
Okay, cool. You have a good time. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right.